Hello everyone and welcome to another day in Godot Jam. If I'm not wrong, it's the 14th day right now and we already had a lot of streams, so if you haven't checked them yet, you should definitely go check the streaming program that we have on our website, gogodojam.com. And this stream is going to be a little special because we are doing something that was not actually scheduled before. It was something that came up while we announced the jam. So to give you a little context here, once we announced the jam on Reddit, we received a post from a professor that asked if his students can apply with their games. And unfortunately, did not allow we do not allow in the game jam for people to put games that are not made in that session, but we still wanted to promote student games. So we created this special session that I'm hosting and actually have invited the professor, which you're going to see in a second, and we're going to do a small interview and we're going to play some games. By the way, the games are available for everyone, and I'm going to share you the link afterwards if you're interested in playing them yourself. So yeah, by the way, if you hear me okay, please do tell. If there are any sound problems, please tell me. If not, I think we can move forward, and I want to introduce you, Dan. Okay, and I'm switching now the camera. So it's on.
Okay.
You're live.
All right. Awesome. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Matarazzo, as my students know me, Mr. Matarazzo, and I teach game design at Boonton High School in Boonton, New Jersey, in the U.S.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting that you chose Godot to teach your students. So why that decision? Why did you pick Godot?
Yeah. So I'd love to get into that. I don't have any real background in game design at all. My background is actually I went to college to be a product designer, and I was a product designer for many years before I started teaching. And one year they said, you're teaching game design this year. I said, okay. So I had to learn as much as I could. And actually the first year we used Game Maker Studio. And this is probably about 5 years ago or so. And we were using a free version, and it was nice. I enjoyed it. It was, drag and drop coding versus or typed. But the following year, they changed, and their free model wasn't the same anymore. So I was scrambling to find new software. And unfortunately, because of how the school runs with budgeting, if you don't know you need money for something a year in advance, you're not buying it. You can't get it. So I started looking for free game developers out there, and I found Godot. And I thought, this is amazing. This is great. It was super easy for me to learn. And I had looked, and it wasn't that different than what I was doing with my students. So I started using Godot the second year I was teaching the course. And since then, I just really I'm all in with it. It's really simple. The amount of things you can do with it. I've had students I've got some students right now who are doing 3D games, and others are doing 2D platformers, all with the same software, all with very little difference in training between them, right? And I have tried Unity, and it just made me go back to Godot so quickly. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of different stuff that schools are using. One thing that I don't like is a lot of those are aimed for students, but they're not aimed for real game development. So especially at the high school level, I want my students to get the chance to use real world software and to not be coddled, not be babied, and okay, here's Game Salad is great if you're in middle school. Construct is good. There's a lot of stuff out there that's good, but if you're trying to really get into the world, Godot is a fantastic way into that. And it doesn't have the complexity, the inherent complexity of Unity or Unreal. Those, I think the barrier to enter those, it's very high. There's a very steep learning curve with those software packages. And while you can do some of them for free, there's a lot of limitations and a lot of things that you might have to pay for. And with Godot, again, completely free. I didn't have to sign up for anything. I didn't have to create an account. I was able to just start running it. And that's probably the main reason why I'm using it with my students, why I started. And I keep using it because I just think it's really fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's a great choice. And also, you mentioned before, like the web version that was
Yes. So that was something completely unexpected. But, as everyone knows, the past year and a half has been very different, especially for schools. In the spring of last year, we went full virtual with about a week's notice. So we found out it could be possible that we would teach from home, and then a week later we were teaching from home. That was really difficult because we're using computers at school running Godot, and luckily it was just about the time that Godot had introduced the web editor. So we played with it a little bit last year, but this year, from the beginning, my students have only been using the web editor because they only have their school-issued Chromebooks at home. And I don't know of any other game development software that'll run on a Chromebook. And thankfully, the web editor of Godot does. It's not perfect, but we've been able to do an entire school year using Godot from a Chromebook at home, or now some in person, some at home through a hybrid method. It's really been amazing for that. I can't thank the hard work of the people behind the scenes at Godot for getting that out there and recognizing that, schools need flexible options for software. And, it really has been incredible to work with.
Yeah. When they first released the web version, I was like, who would use that? but yeah, it seems like sometimes it escapes like your mind. If you're stuck into something, you don't see like all the possibilities or what a lot of people need. And it seems that the Godot team does try to satisfy a lot of different needs, I would say. And some people might say, oh, they're not focusing on one thing or the other, but they do try to maintain like a big community. And yeah, it's really tough with that small team, like compared to other game engines that have much bigger teams. So
given what little I know about what's going on behind the scenes, it seems like it's a small group of very dedicated people and a lot of people, volunteering and putting in a whole lot of time and effort to make something that I don't know what I'd be doing without Godot right now as a game design teacher and as someone who likes to kind of play with it. I'd be out of luck. I'd probably know about a quarter of the things in like Unity or something else, and I'd be stuck using something that wouldn't really have any value for my students once they leave the high school.
Yeah, they get stuck into an ecosystem, and but yeah, that's the issue, because I've been into the job market a lot of years, and most companies do ask for Unity. I think though moving from one engine to another, it's not such a big deal if you know an engine already. So giving the students the option for a free engine so they can use directly without any constraints is a really good decision, in my opinion. Because at some point, I moved from Unity to Godot in 2 weeks. Of course, I don't know everything about the engine, but I could work with the engine to do a lot of stuff already with my knowledge. So it's quite powerful.
Yes. And I've had a similar experience with 3D modeling. Every company that I've worked at has used different software packages for 2D and 3D drawing. Once you know one, it is easy to move around with the others. I do feel, knowing how much I do with Godot, if I had to do something else, I'm sure it would be easier, but to get into it. But I'm glad that I don't, because I really like Godot. I really do. It's anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I think we should get into the good stuff, into the really fun part. So for the main session of this video, of course, we're gonna play some student games, so that's the main goal. And I want to say that the games are hosted on a platform called Gotham.io. And we're actually going to have an interview prepared with the CEO of Gotham coming up in the next couple of days. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check the program. Right now, it's not filled for the in-jump time period because we have prepared some surprises. So you, the people that are here, we're going to prepare some nice things for in period of jump time. Okay, so with that said, let's get started. And of course, I need to switch the camera right now. I'll start with the order from the document you gave me, and probably the first one would be the order from the Gotham page. So the first one would be Dungeon of Recycling. So I'm gonna put it now on the screen. I'm gonna share my screen. By the way, yeah, I'm here in the corner, but you'll still be able to hear Dan. Okay, so with that said, can you tell us a little about the Dungeon of Recycling while I play it?
Yeah, sure. So let me just open up my notes here.
Okay.
For this one, the student wanted to create a roguelike dungeon crawler, and he really liked the idea of procedurally generated rooms. So not having to manually design every part of the level. And one of the great things about Godot, all the resources that were out there, we were able to find, a few different YouTube videos and a couple sample projects that he was able to open up, explore, and use to create this. So it's pretty simple. You're just using the arrow keys to move around, to go from room to room. And I think when there's an enemy, you just sort of keep moving against them. And if your HP outlasts their HP, you win. A lot of these student games, you'll see a lot of them, usually we end up creating kind of either quickly or in a bit of a rush at times. So they don't always get fully finished the way that we would like. But it's, to be able to create what a lot of them are doing in the time frame is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I really like this game. It gives me the vibes of Crypt of the Necrodancer. I don't know if you played it.
That one, no, I haven't.
But yeah, the movement, of course, in Crypt of the Necrodancer, the main thing is to move on the beat. So basically, there is a song playing, and you can only move on the beat. Otherwise, you don't move. It's similar, but here, like if I hold the key, it just goes without stopping. So it's not like. But I really enjoy this because it gives me that old school vibe, and I think the combat system is nice. And what they did in Crypt of Necrodancer, like the enemies had different patterns, and they would attack you in one step. So it was something like turn-based, basically combined with real time. But this totally works as well, and I like the procedurally generated levels. And it seems probably, I don't know how much I can go deep inside this dungeon, but
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. Most of these games I have not had the chance to beat. There's a couple of them that I still struggle with trying to beat. If you when you get the Doorman or Rage Simulator, and I know Artian is watching because I just saw him leave a message in the chat. When you get to Rage Simulator, I haven't had the chance to beat it yet because I can't.
No, I'll try that one as well if it's on the list. Okay, yeah. So really nice game. I like the decision to make this procedurally generated. I think for a small team, this is in most cases the way to go, because the gameplay can be implemented relatively quick, but then the actual content and the polish of that content takes a lot of time.
Yes.
So basically this is an indie game developer shortcut that people can take to make good games, to make replayable games. Because if you make a game, I don't know, there are a couple of games like I think Going Home, or which have nice, or even The Last Three, which they have nice stories, but once you play them, and then that's it. But this one,
that's it.
Yeah, you can play it, and every single time it's gonna be different. So basically until you get bored of the mechanics, you cannot get bored of the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, really great game. It seems like it's stable. It doesn't crash. It shows also the information like level of the dungeon, HP, the score, the enemy interactions do work, and also I have this debuff, and yeah, it's something a little extra. So I don't know what time frame was used to implement this game.
This was probably, I'm going to say, over the course of, I think this project was maybe about 4 weeks, but we only meet 4 days a week and actually it's really more like 3 days because one day is really short. So at most 3.5 hours a week over the course of about a month through school. So, most of these games are completed in about that time frame, I'd say, with some being even less depending on, the time crunch from other commitments.
Yeah. I know how it's you don't have so much time. You have to do other stuff in school, so yeah. But still, yeah, it's really good for the amount of time. It can be a good game jam.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was one thing I had tried. I'll be right back. Someone's at my door.
Okay. So right now it seems that someone is at Dan's door. But thank you for joining the stream. We'll have some more games. So that was just the first game. By the way, all the games are on Gotham.io platform. So if you don't know about Gotham, it's a Godot only hosting platform. And actually they want to do something special. Hey, Chef, nice to see you around. So what Gotham does special compared to itch.io, for example, is it hosts only Godot games, and that has its own advantages. For example, they can optimize the platform specifically for Godot. So recently they released multi-threaded support for any games that are up there. And they also have a lot of payment options. Not a lot, but some really good payment options, which we'll dive into the interview that you're going to have in the next couple of days with the CEO of Gotham. And that's going to be great as well. I think you shouldn't miss it, because if you plan to launch a game with Godot, this is where you should launch it as well. And also it supports now game jams, so probably our next game jam is going to be hosted here. I don't know, but there's a strong possibility.
Yeah, if I can add, GameOfTheMonth.io, it's been really great because I was always struggling to try to find a way to get my student games out there, because I want, we do play testing in class. They play each other's games and give feedback, but it's really great to get that from people who don't know anything about it, who are just coming into it blind. And I don't have to buy hosting on a web page and have them export anything special. It's just, export a PCK file and upload it. It's super easy to use. And it's really, I think, a fantastic tool for anyone working with Godot.
Yeah. Also asked about the discoverability, because that's an important topic. But yeah, this more for the interview. So right now we should focus on the games. So we wrapped up the dungeon run, and we are moving now to the Wolverine Run.
Yes.
And I have it on my screen.
Yes, this one's a little rougher. It's a good game, but it was a bit of a time crunch on this one. The goal is pretty much you're moving to the right, trying to avoid the Sentinel and Juggernaut enemies, and getting to the X-Men logo. I believe you can attack. I want to say it was maybe space or enter.
Yeah.
Or mouse click.
It's mouse click.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah, I think here my feedback would be make sure that the controls are easy to use. For example, I can jump with enter, so that's kind of no problem. But I usually would jump with space, and if I hit with the if I hit with my mouse, then I cannot move and I cannot jump and I
Yep.
cannot hit at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of a little hard to use. So mostly it's usability.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Other than
Yeah, and that's something that I, as a teacher, you leave some things up to students, you don't want to overcorrect too much. But yeah, and that's part of the learning curve is what
Yeah.
controls work well, and I've been guilty of that myself. Like, I'm going to use the D-pad. Oh, but I want to use the mouse. Okay, well then maybe I should switch to WASD. It's it all depends on the intended gameplay, really.
Yeah, I think so as well. Okay, I'm gonna leave in chat like the links to the games that we tried, so you can try them yourself. By the way, and now let's move to the next one. So the next one is, let's see, it's Untitled.
Yes,
It's called Untitled.
Yeah, it started as a joke, and then we just kind of ran with it. I said, "Is it an Untitled game?" So yeah, make the name Untitled. So for this one, it's pretty simple platformer. You're just trying to collect all those basketballs while avoiding the aliens. Again, this was one. A few of these came from a 2D platformer project that was pretty short, probably about 2.5 weeks at most here. And this involved creating all the art from scratch, which you can tell. For some of them, the artwork is a little bit more crisp. But we used pixelapp.com to do most of the pixel art because they can all use that from their Chromebooks versus say using like Photoshop or anything more advanced. And a lot of our stuff, you'll see a lot of them sort of keep it simple, trying to get stuff. I don't always focus on having students create finished games. I care about them learning the basics and getting an understanding of how to build the game. So sometimes you might end up with a game that's not finished or not quite working well, but they now know how to build those components so they can implement that later on down the line.
Yeah. But it seems like it's, for people that are just starting out with game development, these are really good games. Mine, when I started, it was probably much worse because it's much easier to have someone that guides you, that knows exactly what you need to learn next than just trying yourself out. When I started, there were no resources, there were no game engines, probably just proprietary ones. So it was much more difficult, and I had to basically ask my way around people, kind of. And yeah, and probably this is kind of the difference if you just go on Udemy and buy courses randomly versus like having a teacher and a course, a mentor basically that can mentor you through all these kind of things. Eventually you'll get to them, you'll get to know them, but you'll get later than rather than sooner.
Yeah.
So we need.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things that I've struggled with having to learn it beforehand, and especially my first year with Godot, I was about 2 weeks ahead of the students when I was trying to learn it. So it was always tricky, and I've kind of learned from my mistakes. What do I think they really need to know, and try to structure things around that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just going to answer a message in the chat asking if there's any audio. Most of the games don't have audio. That's one thing we've struggled with a bit, just because between the power of the Chromebooks and the web editor and our internet connection, it sometimes became very difficult to incorporate audio into the games. So, that's one thing that I definitely miss about using desktops and the downloaded version of Godot versus the web version.
Yeah, but I would also, if the game had audio, I still need to turn it off because of the YouTube algorithms that detect the audio. And if something is, like when you're developing something, you take stuff from the web as you go. And sometimes those can be copyrighted, and you get into trouble on YouTube. So, and also on Twitch. So I would have to play them silently if I don't know every detail
Yes,
about them.
correct.
So even if they had the audio, I would still not play them. Okay. Yeah. Now we're playing to the end. So this is what we are trying right now. Can
Yeah,
you see it?
this is pretty much like a bare bones platformer. Jump over the pits, avoid the skulls, try to get to the trophy at the end of the level to win. Whenever possible, I do like seeing them using the Godot image, the icon as part of the level. Sometimes that's we start off with just that. I've built full demo platformers using only the icon. And depending on how much time they have to reskin it later on, it's something we can look at. But yeah, with this, it's just a lot of timing your jumps right. And this student in particular has built one or two games very similar to this. Like they very much like the idea of trying to make a platformer that's all about jump timing and the distance.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing here that I want to point out is maybe try to implement coyote time. So yeah, if you're like just over the ledge, like would be nice to just have that one less chance to jump again. And basically, if I move just over this, it doesn't work. Space doesn't work anymore. And would be nice if I just miss the ledge just a little. And we can see this in a lot of platformers. They have this kind of like forgiveness, I would say, to the player to make it more
and that's
fun.
something that's actually I didn't know it had a name until about a month and a half ago. When I had discovered when I was watching a few videos trying to get caught up on some stuff, and I saw, here's how to implement it, and I was always wondering why it was so hard to get some of the jumps in some of my student games. So now it's going to become part of my curriculum next year when I do our first 2D platformer. We will implement Coyote time.
Yeah, that's great. By the way,
if nothing else to say,
Coyote is like it's from the cartoon.
Wile E. Coyote.
Wile E. Coyote. When they stay like over the ledge, they just wait a few seconds and then they drop. So basically, that's where it comes from. Okay.
Gravity doesn't exist until you acknowledge it.
Yeah, exactly. They look down and like, oh, what's happening? And then that's happened. Okay, I think we're gonna play Rage Simulator now. So
all right,
I'm gonna.
Aryan, your game's up.
I'm gonna link the game because it's nice to have them linked. Oh, it's interesting. I like the graphics of this.
Yes, it's a visually. This one's kind of tricky, and he sort of did it on purpose. Tried to make the player, the enemy, and the background they don't blend necessarily, but that's not always super easy to differentiate. So I think part of the game was made more as a method of just trying to make this as seemingly difficult as possible and trying to induce game rage.
Okay. Let me see if I can get some game rage, or I'm a pro gamer and I can finish it. Okay, I finished it. No rage.
There you go.
It was. I did not get any rage. By the way, if you're trying this game, please tell me if you got rage while playing this or no. I think there's a game called I think the hardest game in the world, and that's rage inducing because you die a lot of times. But yeah, I think this one was I beat it at least, or my skill is that good, or I don't know. Okay, let's move now to Go Giraud or Giraud.
Giraud, I guess. He's a football player. I don't know the name so well, but a lot of our students are very much into football. Proper football. Yeah.
The soccer.
Soccer. Yeah. That's right. It all depends on where. I mean, I know, here for us in the U.S. it's soccer, and elsewhere it's typically football, but also soccer.
Yeah. No, I'm in Europe and it's football. Yeah, but but I know
Yeah.
for US it's soccer. Okay, this one is hard. I would say this one would make me rage.
Yes. Yeah. The you don't have a whole lot of clearance on those jumps with a very tight level,
Yeah, it's
and the sprite size. I'm not sure. I'm hoping that the collision was done well. I don't always get the chance to check every single part. But yeah, this one you've got a lot of very very tight spaces. Although I do love the artwork, the little characterizations of the player. I don't know the other guy who's in the little go kart, but I'm assuming he's a rival team player.
oh yeah. This game makes me rage. Actually, it seems like if you go through multiple play runs, you get better at it. So I
Uh,
think I think
yeah,
I can manage to beat it at some point. But yeah, it's definitely worth playing. Okay, so someone is asking, is the Go Godot Jam hosted by you or the official Godot community? So the official Godot community, probably you meant the official Godot team, not the official Godot community, because I'm part of the Godot community because I'm using Godot, right? So everyone that's using Godot and going in Godot's forums and sticking around is part of the Godot community. But it's not made by the official Godot team, but we have their blessings. So I've been in touch with people from Godot team, and I have their support. I will also try to bring someone from the Godot team to an interview. So also for this game jam. So I hope I get that interview. Okay, let's see what goes next now.
yes, and I'm gonna just sort of answer a question in the chat. How common is it for students to copy and paste code from other students? In between student to student, not super common, but I don't discourage copying and pasting code from resources online, especially because I feel that's how I learned Godot, and that's kind of the point of putting your source code up there on GitHub and creating video tutorials and stuff. You're putting it out there for people to learn from, right? So for me, I encourage copying and pasting if I give source code, which for many projects I might give them like, oh, here's the code you should use for your player scene. But I definitely I don't mind it at all. If it helps them create a more finished game, to me that's part of the research process and part of just how you learn.
I think copy pasting code is good if you try to understand the code you are
Yeah.
copy pasting, because at some point you will end up with some bugs or some problems, or you want to implement on top of that. And if you don't understand what's going on, then you'll need another copy paste, or you'll end up with
Yes.
spaghetti code. And the project will fall at some point because it's too hard to maintain. Yeah.
Yes. There's a fine line between blindly copying and pasting and copying and pasting while learning how it works. And that's something that hopefully that's kind of the goal here is I want them to learn how it works and how to properly copy and paste code, because there's plenty of times where you can't. You need to just write your own based on something else. And that's fine. And one thing to keep in mind, pretty much all of these are all these games. None of these are meant to be commercialized. That's not the goal. A lot of them might be using, stuff that you wouldn't be able to use if you were going to be, actually publishing it. So much of this is really just more about learning how to design and develop a game, and learning the process.
Yeah. Once I saw like the Giro there, like it was like you cannot use the face of a famous person, or even a person that's not famous in a production that. But let's move on, and now we have Pack Grab, I think.
Yes, Pack Grab.
Pack Grab. Yeah. Oh, this one is
So for this one, I believe you're just collecting. I think they're book sprites. You're just kind of moving around the level, trying to grab them all, and avoiding the enemies. There's a recurring theme. A lot of these, a lot of these games were the ones that sort of got the most polish from the time spent in class. I think because it was a very simple game build, so a lot of students had more time to put more effort into the art and design when they didn't have to focus on the game mechanics too much. Some other projects were more involved, but maybe didn't get quite as finished because we spent more time on some other component.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a game is really nice. I would say like I would say that these crystals should be like pickable, and they look pickable, but actually they kill you. So
yeah, yes,
it's not
that's
clear.
one thing. Trying to work on trying to give a visual definition between items, enemies, objects, things like that, the player, the level. A lot of that comes with practice, and sometimes that doesn't, you don't quite get what you want out of it, or maybe they selected a sprite because they liked how it looked without really thinking, oh, I should be using this image because that or I should maybe have put a background, like even just a color rectangle in, because you really can't see the sort of gray diamond shapes too well. There's a lot of things where if we had unlimited time, which you never do in a school or a real world environment, there's so many little changes that you could make, but a lot of stuff comes down to what the students went with. And I try not to micromanage. I try to let them create their own, for good or for bad.
Yeah, and I think here is also good advice would be let other people try your game, and see. Just don't tell them anything. Just would be good to shadow them and like see what they're doing. For example, like if someone of you created these games, like in the chat right now, and you see me how I struggle with some things, try to learn from my struggles and try to improve, like for a lot of people, this experience basically. Because grabbing feedback from people that are not you, it's probably the best, because you're all day in the project and you don't see, like, sometimes it looks very clear for you, oh, this crystal is an enemy, but for me that I'm just trying out the game, it's difficult.
No, I completely agree, and that's something that it does take time to sort of recognize and work through that. And you definitely, if you spend too much time in your own thing, you really, you don't know what it looks like from an outsider anymore. And that's a big part of play testing. And in a normal school year, when everyone was in the building and could just move to different computers, we would do a play testing round where the entire class period is, all right, every 5 minutes you get up and move to a different computer, play the game, write down and give notes and feedback. It's been harder to do that this year because so much of it has been virtual. So GameOfTheMonth.io has allowed my students to share their games for others to play and get feedback, which they really couldn't do otherwise.
Yeah. By the way, we have 2 questions. Think about the last question that's right now about the official documentation while I respond to the other question.
Sure.
So quickly, someone asked before, Anidia Roy, the tech master, asked, everyone copies code, right? Why would you memorize simple mechanics like basic player movement or simple code syntax? So here there are a couple of things. First, you don't memorize code. You know, like for example, you kind of know how to do that code without memorizing it, like math. You don't memorize like how you do the actual, like what you actually do to achieve certain things. You just know the rules and you apply them. That's one thing. And of course, you can copy paste the code of movement, but then if you want to implement double jump, for example, if you don't understand what that code does or how that code works, you cannot implement double jump. You cannot implement coyote time. You cannot implement, I don't know, delayed controls or whatever. So yeah, you do need this kind of stuff. And for the next question, should the students?
Yeah. So should they read the docs? So when we first start, I kind of like synthesize the docs for them, I guess, so they get it through my perspective. Just because for any student, you know, especially because this is an elective course, and many of them don't have any programming or coding or game design experience beforehand, just reading the docs blindly is kind of tedious and can be very boring. As for someone who's interested in it, it does really help your understanding of it. So I try to take the big components of the docs and break them down into smaller chunks to teach bits and pieces as we go through a project. And then, of course, there are a lot of fantastic YouTube tutorials out there from many, many different people. There's a lot of great stuff out there on Godot. I think the one I've probably used the most is from Kids Can Code and his fantastic Godot recipes site. There's a lot of stuff on there. Like when we get into, okay, you're just building your own game now, just having access to that site and having access to the docs is enough that they can put something together. It's important to know them. It's important to read the docs, but I do think there's a point at which you need to just go and find another source. As there have been times where I've read the docs 3 or 4 times on something and I can't get through it. I don't understand what I'm messing up. So I have to just find a video, or I have to just open up a project on GitHub and fail at it until I figure out what I was getting wrong. And at least for me, that's my learning style. So I try to incorporate that in my teaching method.
Yeah. And that's great. I think people should, try to get to a lot of resources. But of course, there are too many resources. At some point, they might they might have the opposite effect of decision paralysis, or how is it called? Like,
yes,
you end up in this state.
Decision paralysis. Yep.
Yeah, where you don't know what to pick or which way to go, or even what engine to use for that matter. Yeah. So
it can be tricky. It really can be.
Yeah. So let's continue with the games now. So now we played Pack Grab, and let's go for the Doorman. So I'm gonna put up Doorman.
Be the ultimate doorman and get all those doors.
Okay, let me get some doors now.
Yes. Simple 2D platformer style. Again, I think you can see most of these came from that one assignment. But with this one, he really put a lot of work into trying to make difficult sections, tight spaces, well-timed jumps, things like that. I'd say the first 2 or 3 times that I was playtesting it, I couldn't get past the first part. I had to actually ask him, all right, how did you get past that? And the secret is you got to spam jump while holding left.
Yeah, I'm doing this, and it works.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. He really enjoyed working on this and creating the art from scratch. So a lot of my students really, it's one thing to build the game, but it's another to really get the chance to try to design all the elements themselves. And, you get a lot more buy-in as a teacher when the student likes it, when it's something they want to do. I consider myself very lucky to be able to teach a game design class, because I, for the most part, get to just play. I'm being paid to help people make games or to play their games. I'm in a very lucky position in that regard.
Yeah, but it seems that people that are making the games that you play are all making the rage simulators, because this is hard as well. it's
I think you have
it's
to put
crazy
yourself
hard.
in the you have to
Yeah,
put yourself in the mindset of a high school boy. So I think that sort of helps. They're building games that they want to play, or they're building games that they want to torture each other with. I think that's kind of what it comes down to.
yeah. No, but this game is also really hard. I would classify it as a level stage 3 rage simulator. Yeah.
I will tell him that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know, but yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I could get past the first stage, but yeah,
Yeah, and I think this is something where like implementing, say, like Coyote time, or a few little things here and there definitely would make it a bit easier. I think one component that we didn't get to when we were, it wasn't a focus on this project, but differentiating the level design, so it's not just all the sharp edges and just using just square blocks for the tile set. But again, we weren't really even focused on that. This project in particular was basics of 2D kinematic body, 2D movement, uh, tile map, and enemy interaction. Like it was a very, very simple project over a short amount of time. But I'd love to. Whenever I can, I try to push them to do more. But you don't want to get to the point where then they never get to finish it,
yeah,
which does happen. You feature creep sets in, and you have something that's gorgeous looking but unplayable because you just couldn't get it done in time.
yeah. I think this is why game jumps are really good because they force you to work in a predefined time frame, and
Yes.
you have to make something playable. So you just
Yeah.
focus on the bare minimum that make it work, and then if you have time, polish it or put some extra stuff in it. Okay, and I think we're approaching the last game. I don't know what's Soundboard, but it was not on the list. Or was it?
Oh, soundboard. You can. That's actually you can skip that. I hid that one. It's not a big deal. I'm working with the school play, and we were creating a soundboard of different sound effects to play during it. So for me, it was really easy to design something like that in Godot. I don't know if that's functioning or not. I was just sort of testing some bits out.
Yeah. And let's try now the last game, I think. And this one
Yes, Art Heist.
is not from the students.
No,
Uh,
no.
this one is a special entry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, this is one that I created last year at the beginning of all this. So we were sent home, had to teach from home, and while I was working on figuring that out, my wife's school also went virtual, and she's a middle school art teacher. So I wanted to create something. I wanted to challenge myself to make a hopefully kind of fun game that would also she could use as a study guide for her students to learn art history. So we worked on it together with the planning and came up with the idea of an art heist. You're being told cryptic clues about a painting, and you've got to navigate through the museum to find it. This was the first time that I tried to create on-screen controls as well as buttons like up, down, left, right. You've got to press enter. I can't figure out why. There's definitely something wrong with my code about having to press enter after you try to steal the painting. But with this, I was trying to create something that also students could play from their phone because through GameOfTheMonth.io, just because they wouldn't necessarily all have access to a computer to play this virtually. So I tried to make it touchscreen friendly, which was a new challenge for me.
Yeah. It seems someone in the comments so success sees said like the doorman gets the award of best rage simulator. Yeah.
I am. You are going to make my students' day. I'm not. What is that? So Aziz. Yeah. Thank you, buddy. I'm gonna let them know that.
Yeah, it's fun. But in this game, So basically, if I steal something, I get caught because the lasers are everywhere.
Yes. So this one, it gets kind of tricky. The first part is you have to understand the clue, and not knowing it is very difficult for the students who were intended to play this game. They would have studied these specific paintings and artists beforehand. So this is kind of almost like this was like a study guide for the for a quiz that would have been later on in the marking period. So knowing which painting to steal comes from understanding those clues, and like, you know, it doesn't specifically mention the painter or the painting by name. And then if you steal the correct painting, the goal is to only steal one. You're stealing the one that the person tells you to steal. Then you've got to try to make your way back to the entrance, and it becomes a bit of a timing issue. You're trying to avoid the tripped lasers, but also the guards, and try to make it back. I think this is one of the things that it was a really good concept. I had a lot of fun creating it, and it was very challenging for me to make, but it's still not very polished. I think there are elements that need to be improved. But this was probably the most complex game that I had built on my own since I started working with Godot.
Yeah, it looks nice. I like it. I like it. I mean, if I would understand what to steal, I think the mechanics are nice to like have like this kind of spy simulator. I would say like Splinter Cell like of game.
Mm-hmm.
I like this kind of games. But yeah, having to figure out is probably a little harder. So.
Yeah, it's one of those that, you know, it really lent itself to the students who were intended to play, and I think that's one thing that I would love to change about it, is to try to make it so that the clues are maybe a bit more forgiving, a bit easier to understand, so that way, you know, you're not stuck. If you don't happen to know art history, it would still be enjoyable. And I think that's part of it, is if you don't know it, it's not a super fun game to play.
Yeah, but it's I mean I like the artwork and the mechanics. It's just yeah. I would need to understand it to fully enjoy it. Okay, so I think we wrapped up the games. So I would like to see the chat if they have more questions regarding the work that you do, or about Godot, or interesting facts.
If anyone has any questions about using Godot in the classroom, or teaching game design in general, not that I am an expert at all, but it is something that, you know, I've had to learn over time. To, you know, any teacher can learn how to be good at it. It just takes a lot of time and effort.
Yeah. But it was so you started from zero experience, right? How much time did you need to understand the basics of the engine?
So I'd say probably in about 2 weeks, I was at a point that I was comfortable teaching the basics to my students. So, and you know, that's like 2 weeks of whenever I had some free time, play around, read through some of the docs, watch a couple videos. You know, within 2 weeks, I was at the point that we could do, you know, like I could walk them through the Dodge the Creeps tutorial, or we could do a simple, you know, top-down or side-scrolling platformer, as far as maybe we're using pre-made artwork and just sort of work, you know, here, add the code in, that sort of stuff. After a year of it, I was very, very happy with what I was able to do. And then the new version of Godot came out, and a lot of my code changed when it went from 2 to 3 and so on. And each version changed. And I understand that's how it works. Things did become easier or simpler. But then there was that in-between time where all my resources were for the earlier version. So I had to update and modify and change to sort of meet that. And that's just part of working with something that's live and gets updated.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have some news for you. It seems that Godot 4 is gonna have some updates, so it's gonna break your scripts. Yeah, so that's what I
Oh,
heard. I haven't tried it yet, but it seems, yeah,
for my sake, I really hope that it gets pushed out over the summer, this or next, whatever. But that way, I've got time to learn before the school year.
yeah, yeah. So please launch Godot 4.
Yes.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's good. Yeah, so we
all
we
right.
do have
So, we've got some questions coming in. After learning the basic stuff in Godot and catching up to the advanced, it does still take time, but the more you work with it, it is certainly easier. Once if you can get through the, like, say, the dodge the creeps tutorial, which it does it I think it's a little complicated because they really do try to teach you. They try to put a little bit of everything in that one. um and if you can work yourself through that, I really think that you're good. You can keep going on, and it becomes easier to tackle the more advanced stuff. But there's still things that I always struggle with, like setter and getter properties, and converting string boolean. There's a lot of little bits here and there that I forget, or they trip me up. And I go watch a couple YouTube videos. I spend a half hour during my prep or during lunch to double check things. And I think that's just kind of how it works. Let's see. I don't know if any of my students are specifically interested in the game design industry. I know I've got a bunch who want to be professional gamers and want to play them. I think a lot of them just love playing games, so getting the chance to sort of get a bit of a background insight into how it's made, it gives them a bit more appreciation for what they like to do already. Let's see. What was their experience with 3D compared to 2D? Yeah, that's one thing that has been difficult, especially the past year and a half. I didn't really get into 3D game design with them. It's always been available if they wanted to, and this is the first year that I've had some students work in 3D. For the most part, we've got some tutorial videos or some starter projects that they're working off of. Because it is starting completely from scratch with 3D is difficult. It's tricky if you're only thinking of like vector math and 2D movement controls. Bringing in a third axis is one thing, but then also, okay, we could use Pixel App or Photoshop or even Paint to draw your sprites. Once you get into 3D, now you need 3D modeling access and editing software, and that's stuff that for my students is difficult to do with their Chromebooks because it doesn't really exist. So we'll use like Modeler's resource or Spriter's resource to pull 3D files and just import them in. But at the moment, they really wouldn't be able to do much in the way of, like, they couldn't do animation or character rigging. They can't really create custom 3D just because of the limitations of the technology that we're using. But I would say those who are working in 3D, they self-chose to work in 3D. So they chose it because they were comfortable with 2D enough that they could jump ahead. Most of my students, when given the option, stuck with 2D because it might still have been a bit of a challenge for them.
yeah. Just a quick question here.
Yeah.
Why do your students have Chromebooks? Is like the cheapest device that you can get, or what's the reason?
Yeah, so that's from the school's choice. So the administration of our school district, they a few years back they chose to pretty much switch over to being a Chrome-based school district, so they could give Chromebooks out to students, so they as a personal device to use for schoolwork for their 4 years in high school. I'm one of the few computer labs in the building that is not using Chrome because we, up until this, we really couldn't. But even then, if we were back to a regular full in-person school year, they would be using just basic Windows 10 desktops and working in Godot downloaded. So it might be easier to do stuff like 3D or to use other software packages to create and edit their work. But it does show, I mean, if you can fully design and develop a game on a Chromebook using Godot, that's definitely says something. Like that,
Yeah.
it's impressive. It's hard.
You know, I was thinking, this is like going to, um, I mean, if it works on Chromebooks, yeah, you basically can make a game on your phone, like on Android or on iOS.
Yeah.
Technically, I haven't tried Godot in browser for Android, but it should work, right? So that would be crazy, like making a game on your
Yeah.
phone and like a full game, like no shortcuts. I'd say.
The UI would be absolutely horrible to
It
work
would
with,
be,
but like power wise, yes. If you can use it on a Chromebook, there's no reason why you couldn't do it on a phone, which is probably more powerful than a Chromebook ever will be.
yeah, but the display is like the limit. Okay,
Yeah.
we have another question here.
Oh yes. Do you think that Godot needs a 3D asset store? I think it really could help. I don't know about the idea of having it as a store, because I've done a little bit of work with Unity and their asset store for another project with a different school. I was working with them to try to bring Oculus Go headsets into game design and create and work with VR and 3D. And that's a case where the Unity Asset Store plus that school's budget allowed me to buy some stuff and work with it. But I'd say with Godot, there's a decent amount of stuff in the asset library for 2D and 3D. And I know there are plenty of people like Kenny.nl. They have free stuff and also paid stuff. There's a lot of things out there that you can get and use. I don't know if maybe it's the word store that I'm not a huge fan of in this aspect, because I do like, for me at least, when I think of Godot, I think of it as free and very easily accessible.
Yeah.
But I think it would be nice to see some more 3D demos in the asset library. Possibly even stuff that's like there's one, I think the 3D kinematic one, where it's just like a purple cube jumping around the level or a white cube jumping around the level. I've got a student using that for their final game of the year, and they're swapping out the 3D models. So that's a really easy way to get started. But I think it's tough. 3D work is always really difficult.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So are we archiving? Yeah. I try to. Then they submit all their work. We use Google Classroom, so they turn in like their zip files there. So I always have it. And whenever I can, I do use previous student works to help show things. One thing I've always wanted to do, and I just keep forgetting, is set up a GitHub page specifically of student work for my class and just have it out there, because I think it could really help. I've talked to a few teachers who use Godot, and they've always kind of struggled to see, well, what's the student expectation? What do they get out of it? And I think archiving it and showing that is really helpful for anyone. So at least here with the website, all those games, they're on there. I'm not taking them down. So until that website dies from the heat death of the universe, they're up there for people to play. And I think eventually I would like to sort of archive all that on GitHub as well.
Yeah.
I agree that the official asset library should only be free. I strongly agree with that statement.
Yeah. Well, I'm open to open source and like the freedom of stuff, but at the same time, I just did a video on Godot's struggle with money. So I think we should have an official marketplace that has also free stuff. Probably leave the library alone so people can put like open stuff there. but in parallel do a marketplace where people can buy stuff, and that money, that revenue to go also like a part of it to the development of Godot.
Yes.
Because yeah, in the end, if nobody puts money in the engine, we won't have this engine in the first place, right?
Correct.
So we
Hmm.
do need some
Hmm.
ways to get money in the engine. And yeah, it's tougher when we have this mentality like everything should be free, and it's tougher for them. And
Yes.
I'd hate to
Yes.
see them fire people from the team because it's already small, and if they fire more people, yeah, it will just slow down the whole development of the project, and it will take years to get back on track.
Yeah. It's a there's a fine line between,
Yeah.
being able to run an organization, a company, whatever it is, and having free things out there. And I think that's something that, it's everyone loves having something free.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't? But I think, yeah, having a way to support Godot in some way, and that's something that if I would probably do on my own privately, but I couldn't do through the school.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think yeah. So Chris Keddy says Godot is open source non-profit. Yeah, but you can create a
Yeah.
separate entity. I think Mozilla has this, and Wikipedia as well. Like they have a non-profit entity and then a profit entity, and they
Yeah.
they kind of sell like other stuff through that for-profit entity, and funnel money towards development of their software, because in the end, like, this is how Linux works, this is how Firefox works, and either you choose this, or then you have gated software like Unity or Unreal that you basically have their rules and you play by their rules. So
Yeah.
yeah, and the donations are quite low. I mean, just 15,000 US dollars per month. I don't know. You don't have. You can probably hire one or two people, if that many, or three people. Yeah, in Western Europe or yeah, Northern America. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, and that's something that I'd hate for it to I'd hate for Godot to go away because of something like that.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, people started with
Yeah.
courses now. So if you would want to learn a new feature, would you go to would you pay for a course like this, or would you rather go to YouTube or try something free? In as a teacher perspective.
From as a teacher, if the school is going to pay for it and let me use it as professional development, I would. Like if I'm and I think that's something that most districts certainly would do. It's one of those things that, okay, talk to your supervisor, say, oh, you know what, I'd like to request X amount of money to do these courses to better learn game design. And I don't think that it would be a problem getting that from the school to pay it. If I'm just doing it for myself in my free time because I want to learn it as a hobby, I would stick with most likely just stick with free resources, because if I'm not expecting to get anything out of it. That being said, if I wanted to get into game design, if I wanted to make money selling games, to me, this would be an expense that would eventually get paid back. Like I actually, on the side, my wife and I, we have a small crafts business. We do like laser cutting, handmade ceramics and things like that. And there's some things that you just have to pay for. Like I've bought some files or materials and things, and we know that over time you'll get that back, right?
Yeah. Return of investment.
Go ahead. That's funny. But I think if as a teacher, I certainly would be open to doing a course like that, especially if depending on what it's geared for. Because that's another thing. Luckily for me, curriculum is kind of loose. I can almost do whatever I want, but not every school district is like that. And some of them, it's really specific. You have to do this, and this, and that's when it gets really tricky, and you might not have the resources that you want at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's good to hear that schools do have a budget for this, so you can get
Yeah.
yourself like stuff to learn and then use that to teach the students.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, someone said you should hire Russian coders who work for very cheap. Yeah, I I would say like if you hire globally, it doesn't matter where you live. You should be paid at the global price. But yeah, I mean some companies do outsource in Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia because the development there, yeah, it's a little cheaper.
Hmm.
So yeah, but yeah, coming back to Godot, I think I think it's a good choice to show people this engine. And another problem would be, for example, like that I've seen like people saying, "Oh, why should I learn GD script when a lot of people use C sharp?" Yeah, with C sharp I can do so much more. I can do applications. I can do ASP.NET or whatever. And with GD script, who uses GD script? So that's kind of like people don't know if they should invest time in this or not. What do you think?
So I really recommend learning it in GD script. For me as a newcomer, as someone who didn't really know anything about coding or programming up until a few years ago, um, it's been really easy to learn it because I think the inherent qualities of GD script, it is pretty easy to get the understanding of. You can sort of figure out things are written almost like a sentence. And the closer that we get to writing things out in plain English, the easier it is to learn. That barrier for entry is lowered. I first started learning how to program working with an Arduino and C++. And and I still teach that as a full robotics course using the Arduino. And I think and actually that experience made it much easier for me to get into Godot, especially compared to when I started working with Game Maker, and we were just doing drag and drop coding or like stuff done with Scratch or other websites using drag and drop coding. I get the idea, but it's very difficult for me to scale that up. To go from just blocks to actually learning the syntax and the vocabulary. It is like learning another language. But I think it's kind of something like we had mentioned earlier when we were talking about working with just game development engines and game design software. Once you know one, it's not that difficult to branch off and learn another. Like I speak English, but I've learning Italian and Japanese because I want to. I didn't know how to program, and now I know how to program for the Arduino, and I'm learning GD script. And I also think a lot of it comes down to what resources are out there. If there's more resources specific to GD script and using Godot, that's what I'm going to use. Like I don't even touch the visual scripting in Godot with my students because it's documented, but it's not widely used. So it would be more difficult to present that to a student and not have to constantly sit there and work with them while you've got a class of everyone with different questions.
Yeah.
I think in the end, the lowest common denominator ends up being the best bet when you're trying to teach. And I think using GD script specifically with this application, to me, it's a lot easier, and there's a lot more resources out there
Yeah,
for it.
that's a problem with C sharp on in Godot. And also
Yeah.
GD script, yeah, it's very similar to Python. It's not
Yes.
it's not Python, but it's almost one to one with Python. So you can basically take that knowledge, and Python is widely used in a lot of things from web pages to
Hmm.
I think mobile apps or I don't know. Yeah. Someone, some. I know it's just like, well, actually, I'm trying. to try all of like try to speak with you, like try to chat with the people. It's not easy, I can tell you, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, you can kind of keep track if you really like the topic. So I'm really interested
Yeah.
about the topic. I'm really interested in seeing schools that teach people that teach students Godot, because these students will grow up, will be the future uh, workforce that can deliver games, and having people be, I don't know, learning Godot in the first place, I think it gives Godot an advantage.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I really think it, with a little bit of marketing, like pushing it for education. Not that good, not that this platform was designed for educators. It's just designed to be a good game development engine. And um, I think a lot of school districts, what'll happen is someone up top says you should teach game design. So then it filters down, and you know you can have someone who has no experience or no prior knowledge to it, which was my case, and they pick something that is recommended to them because someone else had done it. And I think now that Godot, and I know I always say Godot versus Godot, and I've got students who go back and forth with it. Um,
Yeah.
but knowing it now, this is all that I would recommend to an educator. And even I've done this with middle school students. So I teach high school, which is 9th to 12th grade in the US, which roughly maybe 14 to 18-year-old kids. But I've done this with with middle school, which is, you're talking like 10 to 14. And I've actually gone as low as elementary school or primary school kids. Like, very simple. For them, it was more, they drew sprites and brought it into a finished game, and then we did a little. I told them what to type, and we did a little bit, so they got an experience of working with it. But if I'm able to use the same software to work with an age gap of like 10 years, that's amazing as a teacher. That's something that you really don't get. And I know it's not designed to be used specifically for lower grades, but if you understand it well enough, you can certainly create projects with it that a younger student would understand. Okay, question. Do you help your students with publishing marketing side? I don't, mainly because we don't have a whole lot of resources on our end for that. That is something I would like to get into. We do actually have we do have marketing classes at my school, especially one is called sports marketing. Maybe I could talk to them about a cross-curricular project to do some game marketing. But that's like a whole nother field that I would feel woefully unsure about. Like, there's a lot that goes into the publishing and marketing side. That my experience as a designer in general, I know some, but I wouldn't be comfortable doing a whole lot with that. I think they would like it, though. It's just not something that I know enough about to get into.
Yeah, probably it should be another course entirely. I would
Yes.
say. I
Yeah.
mean, it's in game development, and this is what people tend to focus on. They think they just like the technical part. You get the technical part right, and then you have the game. But it's actually also the marketing, the
Mm-hmm.
community management, and creating skills, and a lot of other stuff. And you cannot learn by just going to one course. I mean, it's not doable. And especially
Yeah.
you said you have like four days per week, and probably in that time it's just a couple of hours, so it's not that much time.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
um,
It's one of those things, like, this is a 1-year course, and in that 1 year we cover a lot. And for a lot of them, this is their first time ever programming, or some of them doing digital art for something like this. So it's difficult. There's a lot of aspects that I would love to get into, but like you said, they really would have to be separate courses.
Yeah. Okay, we have another one with visual scripting. This one.
Yes. So yeah, I prefer GD script versus visual scripting. And I teach GD script. I do show them that visual scripting is there and it's an option. But for them learning it, there are not a whole lot of resources. There's it's a fraction of the videos and resources and documentation out there that's easy for a student to digest. I know with visual script is well documented through the official documentation. I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff that could be used. But when you put yourself in the mind frame of a high schooler who's just learning this, I think it's a lot easier for them to see. I know it looks like a wall of code, but to know that, they can copy and paste chunks. There's video walkthroughs. There's a lot of stuff that goes step by step with GD script that isn't really out there for other stuff.
Yeah. And also I want to add something here. I've heard from people trying visual scripting in Godot, it's not yet fully functional, so you might get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part, even if it would be functional, I know from Unreal's blueprints, if you work in a team and you work on the same file, and if it's a code file, you can merge the code together.
Yes.
But if you have a blueprint or a visual script or Unity Bolt or whatever, you cannot merge it. So, and you get these bottlenecks. You get the bottlenecks of not being able to work on the same scene at the same time. You get the bottleneck or not being able to work on the same script at the same time. So, of course, if you get these bottlenecks, it will just slow the team really fast. So, the code should definitely not be one of them, because with the scenes, there are a couple of paid options, which I don't like. So, I don't know for Godot. I think they technically should support it because they have the plain text format, so should be mergeable, but I don't know. I would still not recommend it.
Yeah, and one thing that I would add is I really do think it's easier to use GD script, at least for me, because I've done a lot of work with younger students. I don't know if you're familiar with scratch.mit.edu.
I've heard about it, yeah.
or like code.org or things like that. They're really simple drag and drop block based code, and it's easy to make something really simple. It's easy to make simple games and applications. But when you try to do something complex, the amount of mental jumping jacks you have to do to think, all right, what block goes where versus just typing it out. Yeah. It becomes easier to just type it.
Yeah, it also adds. I mean, you could do in visual scripting stuff that you can do in the regular one. But from what I've experienced with blueprints, you might get into these redundancy parts that you cannot make the code in a way that you basically have this don't repeat yourself strategy. So if the code repeats, you put it in a separate module called the function, and then you call that one. But in some cases, in blueprints or other visual scripting, you cannot do that when you need some extra parameters. I've tried Unreal recently again, and they have more support now, but it's still far away from the flexibility of code.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a recommendation for you maybe to show how or at least give guidance how people can implement Minecraft or other popular games, because people might be interested in that.
Oh yeah, it's and a lot of them, they come in they know Minecraft very well. That's one of the things that I think if they have enough time, they certainly could create a pretty good version of. Let's see. Specific kind of video content that would be helpful for you and for me and students. That's a wonderful question. I would say one of the things that I find really helpful is just in general, when there's like, say, a YouTube video that's going over here's how to implement, say, Coyote Time or double jumping or whatever it is. And usually GD Quest or Heartbeast do this pretty well. They'll like zoom in on the code that's being typed so you can like pause it and follow along. But more often than not, in the they include links to the code itself. And that's one thing I've noticed with a lot of my students. If I give them a YouTube video, here's, I've talked about it, here's how it works. Sometimes I create like slideshows with embedded videos. Here, watch this bit, copy this code, work through that. A lot of times they're watching the video and they'll just pause it and like artificially zoom in to try to read the code that's being typed. So I think when there's something that there's a lot of code entry going in, being able to set it up in the video so it's pausable, or so it's really clear, for them it really helps, because a lot of them do, I think it's just a different way of learning for them versus for me. Like, I would prefer to read it on a web page and go step by step. They prefer watching a video, and I think it's just a generational difference. So being able to watch a video and have an easier way of miming or copying code or whatever, so highlighting what you're clicking on, zooming into certain areas, giving a few extra seconds so things can be paused more clearly. I found when people do that, the end result of my students is much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think on YouTube there is always this problem, like we are seeking retention rates, and when you start like showing people code and you start implementing it line by line, what they do is they just move to the end part and they see like the full wall of text, pause it there, copy paste it, boom, done.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
especially when with the video only showing if it's only showing the wall of text as they type it out.
Exactly.
There's no incentive for them to not fast forward. But the problem is then they miss all the context and what someone's saying about why they're doing it.
Exactly.
And it's tricky, and I think it's part of it is just how they want to learn. So trying to work around that or work with it is always difficult to do. Cool. I'm glad that was helpful.
Okay, yeah, I think we can take one last question, and then I have a question for you.
Sure.
So
dream game.
Yeah, the dream game.
I would say there's something that I've been trying to think of how I would do, and a lot of my games that I do or that I come up with, they're random like puns that come to my head like at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. And one of them is called Gone Fission instead of Gone Fishing. And it's a stupid pun, but what I would love to try to do is I want to try to build my own controller for a game. And it's not that I like fishing at all, but the idea of using, say, an Arduino and sensors and physical buttons to create some sort of like sensing fishing rod controller to then fish in this sort of Simpsons Springfield-esque mutated, pond with like three-eyed fish. To me, that would be fun. And I would love to try to bridge my work with Arduino and robotics and Godot more easily. And I've seen that has been done a bit. I just haven't had the chance to really look into it. But I think a dream thing for me would be to create really custom controllers for specific games. Then I could get into my love of 3D printing and laser cutting and build something really unique and like make a full experience. It's not a sustainable thing. You can't make that for a bunch of people, but to me, that's something I would really love to do.
Yeah, it's more of a hobby for your soul.
Yeah.
And I have one last question for you.
Please.
So what do you think Godot needs in order to really become mainstream like Blender has, for example? What do you think is the secret ingredient that it needs?
So when we think about why certain software is widely used, like why is Photoshop and Illustrator, why are those like the default, the golden standard for, say, graphic design? And I think a lot of that comes down to the user base and how fanatical people get about it. But the more that people use it, the more that it's recommended, the more widespread it becomes, the more purchase that's there, right? And I think for me, if I wanted to see Godot really become, and personally, I do think it is a contender with it, with Unity or anything else. But for it to become as widely known as those other software packages, I think the community is there, and that helps. But I also think a lot of it sort of comes down to marketing in a sense. You know, so many games, people marketed specifically, this was built with whatever engine. Or when these game engines market themselves, they show off these insanely popular games that everyone knows, and that forms a connection that people just go off of. So even though something might be better for them to use, they say, oh, well, this game uses that, so I'm going to use that. And that is definitely something that I've seen a lot with other software. But I think it's a lot of it comes down to building brand recognition. And that's something that is difficult. Branding is always really tough. And you usually don't have people who know a lot about marketing or branding get into certain fields. Like, you know, I teach graphic design. I know a bit about marketing. I know how that side of the world works from you know, past work experience. So that's what, to me, it almost always comes down to that. You know, things need to be marketed. They need to be branded, and we need to be able to build this, you know, build up, I should say, the culture around Godot, because there is a community. There are a lot of people who use Godot, and I think just getting it out there, it's kind of like I feel like we're all playing D&D in someone's basement just before it got popular, you know, and eventually it's going to become this thing, and then it's going to be widespread and mainstream. I guess to me, that's what I think Godot would be to become to market itself or to expand its branding to a point where there is actual brand recognition, which at the moment I don't think there really is, because people do know about it, but in certain communities, in certain circles, people know about it. And I think one thing, like, you know, teachers using it, that really helps, because then a new generation of students learn how to use it. So then they spread that. And I think if we can get universities, we can get colleges to use Godot, then the workforce coming out of them would want to use it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to build organically. You know, it just takes time.
Yeah, it needs a strong marketing push, and I hope that the Godot Jam is one such a thing.
Yes.
Something that really creates waves not only in the Godot community, because it was intended for creating waves in game development community. Okay, and with this, I think we can conclude the video. By the way, stay on the line after I close the stream. So, yeah, thank you, Dan, for joining me. And the Student Games were awesome. And I think they're the next generation of developers, and they should be promoted, should be encouraged to take risks and use Godot more.
Yes, so, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
No reward without risk. Well, I really want to thank you so much. This is really an awesome experience for me. I've never gotten to do anything like this, and especially for high school students to have their work showcased on a live stream, and for me to get to be a part of this and give whatever infinitesimally small amount of insight I can. I'm always happy to do so. This really was great.
Okay, yeah. Let me say some finishing text, and I'll get back to you in a second. Okay.
No problem.
Cool. So thank you all for joining. So we have the games links in the live chat right now, but I'll put them later in the description as well. So in case if you missed any of those, we can you can later go back to them. We also we are preparing some interesting events in the game jam time, so make sure you go to gogodojam.com and check what's upcoming. By the way, right now it's says to be announced. So we're gonna do a stream in that time period, and we'll discuss more about that. With that said, thank you all for joining today, and see you in the next stream. Bye.